So I'm Lauren Huffmaster from Adventure Therapy Foundation, and I'm meeting today with Jessica Bouchot, who we are fortunate enough to live in the same region, and we've been having conversations about COVID and cancer, specifically as it applies to individuals with stage 4 cancer, as we are both living with stage 4 cancer. Jessica's actually meeting us from her RV where she travels to get her clinical trials in Southern California. And so we just wanted to have a conversation and record this moment because it is such an important moment in history, both for the world with COVID, but also a very important moment for cancer and cancer survivors. And so we just want to have a few moments to talk about COVID's impact on cancer and the treatments that we need and what we're experiencing in this moment of cancer. Go ahead, Jessica. You were saying that COVID is really impacting your friends, the people you know with stage 4 cancer. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, so part of this is because I'm a person that makes friends easily, so I have a lot of friends, but this year has been devastating on the stage 4 community, and I've lost, a friend pretty much consistently every day, or at least 5 days a week, in various online support groups. And then also, in particular, in Northern California, friends that I have in person, our region has been devastated, I think, more than others because of the really tight shutdowns and hospital staffing shortages. So basically, when you're stage 4 and you have done your standard of care treatment and exhausted it and it stopped working, usually the next step is to try clinical trials. And clinical trials are really labor heavy, like they require a lot of people to monitor you and to double check new medication dosing. And so you usually have like a doctor, a nurse practitioner, a few RNs, and then a few MAs that are associated, and a clinical research coordinator actually too, and then a few other people who are just helping make sure that they observe how the medication's going in and making sure everything's fair and recorded, because it's science and they need to do everything right. So because clinical trials take so much man or woman power, they've really been slowed down just because there's just not the people to run them. And then also some of the research funding and effort has just been redirected to COVID efforts, unfortunately, which it's good to research for COVID, but you don't want to take from cancer patients also. So because of this, particularly in Northern California, I've seen, over a dozen people that I knew personally that I had met with in person, like who have all passed on this year because they exhausted standard of care treatment and then went back to their hospital in Northern California and said, what do you have for me for clinical trials? And there's just nothing available, which is what I experienced too. There was one trial that I did that didn't work. So then we went back to the drawing board to look for another trial. And there was literally only one other trial available that wasn't even for my particular kind of cancer, and already looked like it wasn't working in people. And they were like, this is all we have to offer you, kind of take it or leave it. And that's when we started looking in Southern California, which led me to where I am right now, sitting in my RV, because I'm on a trial in Southern California, because there's just more trials available here. There's more hospitals, more staff. Their restrictions are, their COVID restrictions are significantly less, especially in Orange County. And I know in San Diego County, it's significantly less too, where in San Francisco, there's a lot of, rules for the hospitals and stuff like that, or in the Bay Area in general. The Bay Area has been really tight on lockdown. And in Southern California, it's just not, they're not experiencing the same thing. They haven't had the mandatory reductions, which is a little, it's a little, I don't know, scary when I go in and the waiting room is crowded. Like they're not only like fully operating all the patients that they normally see, but they're also allowing caregivers in, which caregivers don't live the same life unless you live with the patient. But a lot of caregivers, like if they're the child caregiver of an older adult cancer patient, they definitely don't live the same lifestyle. So you worry a little bit about possible COVID exposure at the cancer center, which I know has happened at um, not at my hospital in Southern California, but at another hospital in Southern California. They had an outbreak in a chemo infusion center. So there needs to be like a balance, but at least there's trials happening in Southern California. And as long as I keep what I need to do to keep myself safe from COVID, I'm glad that they're running trials.
I do want to just clarify, when you talk about losing friends this year, you're speaking directly about friends from cancer, not losing friends from COVID. This is all
Yeah.
about
Oh no. So these are
cancer
people
specific
who,
friends.
yeah, and they're not cancer patients who got COVID and didn't fare well. They're cancer patients who did, first line chemo, second line chemo. And in colon cancer, there's only 2 good lines of chemo, and then there's like 2 pills that you can take that give you like a little extra time usually, but it's not effective. And there's not really good treatment for colon cancer, mostly due to funding. For stage 4 patients, there's just not a lot of options. So once you exhaust those first 2 lines, you really need to like try clinical trials. And these people just didn't have those options. So after they failed chemo, they tried those 2 pills, and then their doctor said, we don't have anything to offer you. So either you can try and find a trial somewhere else, like I did, or go home on hospice. And when I have like a photo of all of us together in 2018, actually, and in 2019 too. There's like 2 or 3 of us alive still, and everyone else in this group photo at the friend's house, the friend even passed away, who it was at her house. They're all gone, So it's been really hard. There's also like a little bit of survivor guilt, or like guilt because we've been successful with being able to come down here. And this has been a year for like such a social awakening too around equity issues. And as we talk about like Black Lives Matter and like inequities in the world for all kinds of social justice issues, that's also the case for clinical trials. Like and it's good, like there's a groups now that are addressing that clinical trials are usually participated in by middle class white people, so not everyone has what I have, which is the ability to get in an RV that was paid for by a successful GoFundMe, because we're really blessed by a lot of great people in our lives, and have my husband take off work and drive us down here, and kids on distance learning, husband doing distance work. Like we have so many advantages that so many people don't have. So this is not an option for everybody. So clinical trials need to be everywhere. They can't just be in certain pockets of the country. But these friends who passed on, they either didn't have the resources to be able to travel, or it was just too late and they're tired. Cancer's hard. People get tired, rightfully so.
When I think about COVID and cancer, the thing that keeps coming to mind is like when I was initially diagnosed, they talked about like, here are the treatments you're going to be on. Here are their side effects. A lot of the side effects of the treatments I was on were future cancers. Like in 10, 15 years, this radiation will create a cancer and we'll be prepared for it. But we need to focus on the disease in your body that's trying to kill you right now. And I keep thinking back on that statement, and I look at how the cancer community, the world really has responded to COVID and all the restrictions around COVID, yet we're not anymore dealing with the cancer in our bodies that's trying to kill us now, right? We've already got something that's compromising our ability to live, yet we're not able to access treatment for that because of a potential disease that might compromise our ability to live. And I just think that this shift, how we've put all of our focus, or the medical communities put all of their focus on preventing COVID and forgetting about those of us who right now need the treatments today.
Yeah, it's definitely been eye-opening and maybe a little crushing at times to feel more disposable. I mean, both in terms of like what you're talking about, where the medical community reallocated resources to COVID research and, hospitals are being reallocated. Even big cancer hospitals are bringing COVID patients in because there's nowhere else to put them. And it's like, keep the cancer patients safe, give us our place, so there's that. But then there's also the like attitude by some people who are like, well, like COVID's only going to kill the weak and I'm not weak, so that doesn't bother me, so there's that aspect too. But you're right, it's been a year of um well, almost a year of being aware of how fragile life is. We can't do it all. And I guess, you know what's relevant right now is my husband and I were talking about the COVID vaccine. And I'm on this clinical trial and nobody on my trial has had the vaccine yet. And the drug company is making a decision about whether or not we'll be allowed to take it. But whatever their decision is, I have to make a decision too, because the trial's working. So do I want to take a drug that maybe I don't know if it's going to stop the drug from working, or which might give me some of my freedom back, but what if it makes it so the cancer starts growing again? And because the drug doesn't work, like I would rather just hide from COVID, because it seems like something I can control fairly easily with like common sense practices, washing my hands, wearing a mask, all that stuff. And it's not that I don't think the vaccine is safe. It's just that cancer for me is so much more of an acute issue. Like cancer is in me trying to kill me. COVID is out there and I can try and keep it out there. And I just need to do whatever I can to keep the cancer at bay more than, worrying about COVID, I guess.
Yeah. The other issue Jessica and I have been talking about is preventative, like these preventative measures that have been stopped. So, for example, I have stage 4 cancer. It's been stable for a year, or it's been stable for a few years now, but I have not seen a physician in over a year. So my doctors don't want me to come in. They're not doing physical exams. I still am getting scans, imaging, but I have not seen a doctor other than teleconference. And just all the other people out there right now who perhaps have some kind of risk, or they are finding lumps or whatever, but they may or may not be able to get in for imaging, may not be able to get in for screening, things of this nature, and just how that's going to impact the future of cancer.
Yeah. The prediction right now from like the National Cancer Institute is in the next 10 years, they'll see 10,000 more late stage diagnoses from this delay in screening. Colon cancer is the only cancer that is actually completely preventable with cancer screening, because the difference between like a colonoscopy and a mammogram is that when you go for a mammogram, if they see cancer, then you attack it, right? And then it's like you form a plan. Whereas in a colonoscopy, if you go for a colonoscopy and they see a polyp, they remove it during the screening, and then you're not at risk for having cancer anymore. You're called a previvor instead of a survivor. And of course, if they find cancer, that's a different thing. But most of the time, they find polyps and can remove them before they have a chance to develop into cancer, because polyps take a long time to develop into cancer. So last year, colon cancer screening was down by like 70%. But if you assume that colon cancer didn't change, that means 70% of people who would normally have polyps found and removed didn't have their screenings. So those people, that cancer is allowed to, or that polyp may have been allowed to develop into cancer. And like I said, it takes a long time. So hopefully people now that they restarted colonoscopies, hopefully people will get them. And same with mammograms and skin tests and PSA tests and other prostate cancer testing. Any of those preventative tests, hopefully they'll start happening again. But I definitely think, oh, and also women going for their annual exams. Like you said, you're not going in right now, and I think a lot of women aren't getting their annual exams. I know I did have a physical recently because I was going to have a medical procedure and anesthesia requires it. But there was nobody at the doctor. It was eerie. I mean, they did bring me in early knowing that I'm immune compromised, but there was 10 times more staff than patients there. So people do need to get back to those screenings, and especially as soon as people do get the vaccine, that gives you sort of a green light to go ahead and catch up on this stuff. I have a friend who just had early stage melanoma removed, and I was thinking to myself, gosh, I haven't had my skin checked this whole time, so it's definitely important to get on those screenings.
For sure. And then I just want to acknowledge that the reason Jessica and I wanted to have this conversation and to record it is because we have had people we've lost, and we just want to honor the resources that weren't available for them, and honor their story and their cancer fight and all that they were able to do in COVID and all that they were not. It's just something that we're in such a specific moment in time that we could quickly forget the mistakes of the past as it applies to cancer patients as we pursue a different vision perhaps of taking care of COVID. We've forgotten our previous, what was important before COVID came, and that's what's going on in our lives. And we just want to make sure that we capture this moment and we had this conversation so that we can move forward better than we did in the last year.
Yeah, and I think what you're doing, Lauren, with adventure therapy is so good because something that people don't think about is that stage 4 patients who are, out of options are living out their final months, weeks, and days of their life in isolation, possibly. And one of the unique but sort of beautiful things about knowing that you're going to die is all the hoopla around it. Usually people go on these like amazing bucket list trips and have family come, and you get to hear what you mean to people and all those things that are healing in a way and sort of put like a nice bow on a life well lived. And I have a couple friends that are in hospice right now, and then the friend that we lost last week, um, who I think once you're in hospice, I think people loosen up a little bit and have family come in, because at that point, if you have COVID exposure, it's fine. But for people like me, where I am actively trying to not get onto hospice, my family hasn't really done anything. We were fortunate because of the RV to be able to go on one family outing last year, and then recently on a day off from medical appointments, we were able to go on like a drive out to like a remote area and go on a hike. But the reality is that I am living with pretty significant amount of cancer in my body, on a drug that I don't know how long is going to work. So I could have very limited time left. And I have a lot of friends like that who know that they're in the last year of their life. And it's really hard to balance the feeling of knowing, or of, I guess, asking yourself, like, what's important? Do I want to go more places and see more things? Like, what's my bucket list? Having more time with my kids, even if that means that I'm at home, or being able to go on that trip to Jamaica or something like that. And people are making these really, really hard decisions that it's unfortunate that we have to make them. So I appreciate what you're doing with adventure therapy, where you have the new place where people can go for like a COVID worry-free vacation for people who live in Tennessee. And then the vacation that you gave us last year would be totally COVID safe. Our family went and had the retreat in Tahoe, and we went to the snow and just like hiked around in the snow and stuff like that, that would be totally COVID friendly too. So I think that what you're doing is perfect for people because it doesn't have to be around people. We can keep using Airbnb or whatever and give people these opportunities to live a little bit with their families during this time and get out of their house and make some memories, even though we're going through this crazy pandemic.
Yeah. And a lot of my posts, I say like cancer is not going to wait for COVID. And unfortunately, that was the title of the post that I did about the friend that just died, because she had a retreat she wanted to do and she was just not able to do it. Because even if it's safe to send someone to Tahoe, I can't trust that Tahoe will remain open. You know, the legislation or whatever keeps changing about what's open, what's closed, what's open, what's closed. And so making those plans for people has been really difficult for me because I don't want to promise them something and then that be lost as well. And so just all of the constant changing around COVID has been definitely hard on the emotional health of those impacted by cancer. But I'm excited for what I can do. And like I said, that's
Well,
why we got,
hopefully
go ahead.
yeah, I think that the vaccine, it sounds like they're going to start, hopefully, at least in Southern California, I know they're prioritizing it to people who are immune compromised or, actively going through cancer. And then nationwide, I think they're doing a better job. I think Northern California is still trying to find its footing. Their rollout hasn't been as smooth up there, but hopefully they start giving them to cancer patients and cancer caregivers, so that, you know, maybe the caregivers can at least go to appointments with us. That would be nice.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Jessica, it was nice talking to you. I'm glad you made it to Southern California this week, despite the snow and the storms. And to everyone who's out there who's impacted by cancer, just know that you're not alone. There are those of us who are jumping through the same hoops, who are holding on to the same hopes as you. And I hope that our conversation, our story encourages you.
Thank you.